Stephen, it is so great to have you here. I got to read your newest book here, Return of the God Hypothesis, and absolutely loved reading through it. And one of the little elements that I liked in it were these snapshots that you gave of your own journey, your own intellectual struggle to theism and intelligent design. Because, I mean, you're one of the leading advocates for intelligent design, and yet you didn't always believe in that. It took you a process of working through a lot of questions to eventually arrive there. So start us off, and we'd want to hear that story. I think you mentioned that really beginning around the age of 14, so take us into that.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking about intelligent design at that age, but I had a series of kind of personal setbacks in adolescence. A lot of people do. But I broke my leg on the ski slopes when I was 14, and woke up in the hospital, a full-length leg cast. And I was pretty hyperactive, and so all that energy, I think, went into my mind spinning on things. And my dad had given me a book while I was convalescing about the history of baseball, and I loved baseball, and very much thought that that was my future. I needed to play shortstop for the New York Yankees or something. And I loved all the stories of the greats. But right before I'd gone on this ski trip, I'd had some unwelcome questions popping into my mind for the first time. I don't really know where they came from. But it was a question like, well, what's it going to matter in 100 years? You think about the routine of a school kid's life. You know, you get up, you have breakfast, you go up, get on the bus, you go to school, you go through your classes, you come back, you do your homework, and maybe you do an after-school activity. Then you just keep going through the whole routine. And there's probably some other things contributing to this. I was unhappy, I was unpopular at school. I was playing basketball to try to get popular, to win the approval of a particular girl. None of it was working. My parents, who have a lovely marriage now in their 80s, it's very touching to see them with each other, were on the rocks at that particular time. I could feel the tension in the house. And so I had these questions that just, what's it going to matter in 100 years? But I kind of dismissed it. And then I had this skiing accident. I woke up in the hospital, and they just, these sort of existential, I didn't know to call them that, questions just came back with a vengeance. And as I was reading the book about baseball, there were wonderful stories, but they all seemed to end the same way. There was a promising prospect who was scouted and came up to the major leagues and ended up having an amazing career, got over 400 home runs and hit 300 something for a career batting average, or won a certain number of games in the World Series. All those things went into the record books. But by the time the player was 38 or 40 or whatever, the player, greats of the game had retired. And then they enjoyed the rest of their life that came with having been a celebrity in professional sports. But at the end of the day, they died. And so here, the thing that I admired is the sort of greatest thing you could achieve, which would be a professional baseball player. At the end of the day, all it was a bunch of numbers on a piece of paper. And so what did that matter? What was achieved by that? And then I got to thinking, well, I talked to my mom about it. She said, well, it's because they're just chasing a ball for a living. But I thought, well, how would it be different if I was a surgeon? So maybe I would save 100 lives, but those people would eventually die. And then, so I just got in this way of thinking that I couldn't think of anything of having any lasting meaning or value or purpose. And I read a little book. I actually cited it. We had to get it off of Amazon, but I read it when I was 14. It was called Psycho-Cybernetics by a popular psychologist, self-help psychologist in the early 70s. And it was about how if you set goals for yourself, you could give yourself a sense of meaning. So I started trying to do that, but invariably the goals that I set were kind of silly. And at the end of the day, I thought, well, but the goals themselves are meaningless. So what does it matter if I played a trick on my sister or got my homework on time for once? And so along with that came other weird thoughts like time. I was really freaked out by time. Still am if I stop and think about it. But every day I would hobble up on my crutches to the top of our driveway to get the newspaper, to get the box scores so I could read about how the Yankees had done the day before. And every day the date on the newspaper would be one date further, April 22nd, April 23rd, April 20. And I would think about an event, like moving this mug from here to there. Now, a minute ago, the mug was over here, and I can remember the action of moving it from there to there, but that event is now gone forever. The actual event that I participated in is past. It's gone. And so I got this very strange sense of the philosophical word is ephemeral nature of things. Everything is passing. There's a stream of sensations that mark those events that I participated in, but they're gone, and the event right now is already gone. And so I had this very weird feeling that there had to be something that didn't change, or else everything that we experience, which is constantly changing, was not grounded in a way that gave it an ultimate reality. And it kind of freaked me out even to have the thought. It panicked me. I thought, why am I having this thought? Because it felt like there was nothing solid in any of my experience. Everything was changing, everything was moving, and there was no place that was just there, that was the basis of everything else, that had constancy. And that was a strange thought. And then there were other strange thoughts. I remember looking one day at my windowsill and the pattern on it, and staring at it and thinking, well, how do I know that that's really there? I mean, that's just the way it appears to me, and maybe it doesn't look the same to somebody else. And well, it's kind of juvenile sort of philosophical reflection, but again, it kind of freaked me out. It seemed like, how do I know that that the reality that I'm perceiving matches what's really out there, and that it's the same reality that everybody else is seeing? And these are not terribly profound thoughts, but what happened was I panicked and thought, then I had another thought, which was, this must be what it means to be insane, to be having thoughts like this. And I remember the first rush of adrenaline when I had that thought, that there was something really deeply wrong with me. And then I got a kind of feeling like there was a sort of maelstrom or downward spiral. Well, I would become afraid of having the thought that I might be insane because of the thoughts that I was having. So anytime I had one of those thoughts, then that just triggered the same fear, and it was off to the races, And it was like then for the period of time I was in this leg cast and a couple months beyond, kind of like a black cloud. I began to think of it as an oh, it's here again, it's here again. I could never get away from it. It was 24/7. Every waking moment I was aware of either that something's wrong with me, or I may be insane, or these thoughts that were causing me to think that, or some constellation of all of that. And I was 14. I have the most wonderful younger brother. He's my alter ego. I'm a philosopher. He's an entrepreneur. I was, the nerd at school that was not popular. He made everybody laugh. He had platinum blonde hair. So fun. And he started not even really knowing what I was going through, but just because of his personality, he started pulling me out of myself. And I got out of the leg cast and started to re-engage life a bit. These periods of angst, for lack of a better word, would sort of dissipate. And the first time it happened, I thought, well, if it'd go away for a little while, it could happen again. But I had recurrences of this all the way through my senior year in high school. That was the start of it for me. And
was your home a Christian home at all? Well, did your parents practice?
We had been raised sort of nominally Catholic. And I have lots of very devout Catholic friends today, but we weren't of that stripe. And I did go to Catholic schools for 2 years, but I didn't really understand the gospel, and I had never read the Bible, and we had stopped going to church. And there was something in my experience growing up Catholic to about the age of 13. It was just before that, that really did give me a kind of Christian worldview. I had a sense that God was good, and heaven is up and hell is down, and there's a moral order, and didn't quite understand everything about Christianity or much about it, but I had a basic sort of framework. And when we stopped going to church, I did sense a kind of a spiritual emptiness that was probably a contributing factor to what I was experiencing.
When did you start trying to process all of these questions then in light of God? So
9th grade was a mess, because I was still kind of in the throes of all this and unpopular. But in my sophomore year, I picked up the big fat white Catholic family Bible, and it fell open to the page between the Testaments. And there was a wonderful picture of a very rugged looking Jesus, and the passage from Matthew 11:28 saying, "Come unto me, all ye who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. And I thought that sounded pretty intriguing. And so I just started reading at the beginning of the New Testament. And I was really blown away by what I read. You know, some of my friends in high school were having very dramatic conversion experiences. Billy Graham was doing crusades at that time. There was a popular Bible camp called Sambika, and a lot of the kids that went there were just amazing kids at school. They had something different, I could tell. You know, they were full of sunshine and light and fun, and they were kind, and you know, but I wasn't there. I mean, I didn't know what that was about, but I just started reading, and I found that I had to read one chapter a night. It settled my internal anxiety thing that was going on. Later, I had a professor friend who called it metaphysical anxiety, you know. And what I later realized was that there was implicit in the scripture a worldview that directly addressed the questions that I was having that were actually philosophical, and I didn't know it. And when I was a sophomore in college, I had a wonderful philosophy professor who was a life mentor for me named Norman Krebs. And I was taking a class that he did of his own design based on the works of Francis Schaeffer. And my professor was a Kantian scholar, and so he kind of took Schaeffer and souped him up a little bit with some of the tools of analytical philosophy. But we were one day in a January class in the snow, and he was paraphrasing a passage from Jean-Paul Sartre, where Sartre said, "Without an infinite reference point, nothing finite has any enduring or lasting meaning." And I almost jumped out of my chair. I said, that was what was bothering me when I was 14. And I began to, and I talked to him about this, and I said, so I wasn't insane. I was just being a philosopher. And he joked and said, well, it's been said that it's a fine line between philosophy and insanity. In any case, that were I came across things in the Bible that spoke directly to the questions I was having, and otherwise there was a worldview in the Bible that spoke indirectly to it. I remember coming across a passage in the book of Hebrews where it said that Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And the great passage in Exodus where God reveals his personal name to Moses as I am that I am, the eternal self-existent one. And I don't know where this came from, why this bubbled up in me, but the sense that there had to be something like that as the ground of all being, or else everything that we were experiencing was passing and going the way of all flesh faster than we could even perceive it.